Hi, everyone. I'm Ronnie.
And I'm Jessica.
And you're listening to Clean With Me,
the podcast where we walk you through cleaning your house.
Thanks for joining me. In today's episode, we're going to be deep cleaning a living area. This is going to be kind of a short episode. So what I want you to do is quickly gear up for your cleaning session, whether that means putting on a pair of shoes or pulling your hair back, changing into something more comfortable, or perhaps lighting a candle or turning on a wax warmer and popping some fresh wax in there. Whatever kind of gets you into the mood for cleaning, we're going to talk about deep cleaning a living area. I feel like when I'm deep cleaning, I'll tend to gravitate toward other areas like a kitchen or my bedroom. And with the living area, it's kind of like pick up, vacuum, dust, pick up, vacuum, dust. And it's not a room that I think about when I think about needing to deep clean. However, once in a while, my living room needs an overhaul. And maybe you have more than one living area. Maybe you want to kind of run around your house and work in more than one room. But there's probably time just to deep clean one living area today. So let's get right into it. First, of course, you're going to remove your surface clutter. I don't like to dive into a project of going through a toy box or sorting through some gaming equipment or, even cleaning baseboards in a messy environment. I like to straighten up the room first before I dive into a project. I don't want to just, be sitting there in a messy room and then dump out more stuff to go through, or that can lead to feeling overwhelmed. So let's take the first few minutes to just pick up, remove any clutter from the floor, remove anything from your couches, your coffee table, end tables, other surfaces. Like I have a piano, you may have shelves. Let's just remove anything that doesn't belong, get it put away, and dust off the surfaces. And of course, you may also want to dust a TV. Now, it's important to keep in mind when deep cleaning, you don't want to have just this all or nothing mentality, because sometimes it feels like you're not going to have time to do the job correctly. And don't get me wrong, I believe in if you're going to do something to do it right, but it's not doing something right if you hyper-focus on small details or procrastinate and never do it at all. Obviously, the task that you're trying to do right is keep your whole house presentable. And don't feel overwhelmed if that's not on the table for you today. I mean, maybe it took a long time for your house to get into the condition it's in, and it's going to take a long time to get out of that. That's okay. We're focusing on one area. But what I'm getting at is doing your best at something also means knowing how to prioritize tasks and how long to spend on each task. For example, at my job, I write for a living, and I only have a certain amount of time to spend on each piece because there's a certain expectation as far as productivity. So I basically have to balance quality with quantity and not over obsess. Of course, I want to double and triple check everything before submitting it, but I don't want to obsess too much on the wording. And if anyone out there is a writer, they know you can always improve on just about any written work. So doing my job right is producing quality work, but also producing the quantity that I need to produce. So you want to look at housework the same way. Instead of just thinking like, I don't have time to really deep clean this room, so I'm just going to quickly pick up and vacuum and just leave it at that, you never end up deep cleaning, kind of due to perfectionism, or you might just focus on one small detail and not get the whole room done. So I encourage you to, if this is something you struggle with, doing things right, doing things perfectly, try to look at the big picture, because the goal is not to clean your baseboard correctly. The goal is to keep your entire house presentable. And just in life, something's got to give. I mean, you're not going to have everything perfect in every area. You're not going to ever have all of your ducks in a row. For example, we're getting ready for a party, and if you're listening to this, you might be one of the party guests. I'm probably not going to do everything I even talk about in this episode because I've got a house full of people. I'm enjoying my grandkids, and there's just a lot on the agenda. So, we're probably not going to have clean baseboards, stuff like that. We're going, but what we are going to do is our best with the time allotted. By the way, speaking of that, Jessica, my oldest daughter, if you're new to the show, Jessica is my co-host and my oldest daughter, and we live several hours apart. She is in town for my youngest daughter's birthday, and so I'm kind of filling in for her. Normally, this would be her solo episode. We do one solo episode per week, plus an episode where we record together. So normally this would be her episode, but I'm filling in for her because I want her to decorate the cake and do some of the shopping and stuff like that. So we've got a lot going on at our house. And when you're having a get-together, that's not what this episode is about, but the point is opening up your home and having people over and being fun. Don't stress out. Weird story, famous quote from my grandmother. You know how older people use different terminology that kind of sounds funny to us? There was a famous quote where my grandmother said, "I always get so nervous when I'm having an affair." And everybody was just kind of like, the younger people in the family kind of gasped, like, what? But by affair, she meant like having a get together or a party, an event of sorts at her house. And she was calling that an affair. Different meaning of the word, but random thing that popped into my head. But I think there is a tendency sometimes when you're planning to have company to kind of stress out about it. You need to just take a breath, slow down, and do things in order of priority. Okay? So by now, you've probably gotten your living area straightened up, whether that's a living room, family room, or just some other area of your home you consider a living area. For the sake of this episode, I'll just call it your living room. By now, you've gotten your living room picked up, straightened up, and it's time to go into some of those more, deeper, I don't want to say more deeper, some of those deeper cleaning tasks. Now, what you need to do is kind of going to be unique to you. Maybe there are some areas that you don't normally dust. For example, on our everyday routine, I guess, we do wipe down the coffee table and the end table. We don't always dust the piano, TV stand, and TV screen. We also don't always dust the pictures on the walls, but those are additional dusting chores. And then, of course, blinds, windows, and baseboards. And if that seems overwhelming to you, maybe just pick something. What is the most glaring problem? Do you have super dusty blinds that you need to just start wiping down? Or do you need to wipe your baseboards? Or are you having company and you can just adjust your blinds in a certain way at a certain angle to where the dust is less visible? I mean, that's a thing. So anyway, let's not get overwhelmed. And I'm not saying that you're planning for guests. But disclaimer, if someone's coming to my house, yes, I have a cleaning podcast, but I also work a full-time job, and I also have a house full of people right now, and I'm going to be working the day of the party. So, yeah. And 5 minutes after the party starts, the house is going to be trashed anyway. So, yeah, forgive me if it doesn't look like the home of a cleaning podcaster. So let's talk about other deep cleaning chores that you might want to do in your living room. Obviously, I can talk faster than you can clean, but I just want to give you some ideas. Do you have a ceiling fan or light fixture that needs to be dusted? If you can safely do that, that's fine. I have a vaulted ceiling. I can't reach the ceiling fan. Once in a while, my husband will dust it on a ladder. I don't really have to mess with it. What about looking up? That's something that we don't do every day. Looking up and checking those corners for cobwebs. You'd be surprised. Sometimes you need to just use a long tool to dust a cobweb out of the corner, and you don't have to have some specialized tool. I mean, just grab your broom or something and hit that corner, get rid of that cobweb. I think a big part of keeping your house clean is being observant. I'm here to remind you, even if this is just a random weekday cleaning session for you, be observant. When we're in a room and you've already picked up the obvious, you've already done the things that you do every time you straighten up that room, it's time to get observant. Look around. Look at your switch plates. Look at your doors. Look at your door frames. Look at your walls. I'm not telling you to wipe down every single wall, but there might be a few smudges. I think I mentioned this in another episode. I don't remember if it was bonus content or my regular episode, but there was something spilled on the wall next to the piano. Like someone had a drink up there, knocked it over, didn't clean it properly. So sometimes there's just a spot on your wall that needs to be dealt with. So be looking around for that. Sometimes you need to dust under furniture if you can safely do so. Sometimes it's a good idea to move furniture. One of the big deep cleaning tasks in any living room is usually to clean inside your couch cushions, like remove those and clean that out, or to clean under your couch, whether you're reaching under it with a broom or moving the couch. Maybe the bottom of your couch is flush with the floor, but if it's not, you're going to need to clean under it. For us, we have to move our coffee table and clean under that pretty frequently. Sometimes when my kids pick up and vacuum the living room, I'll move the coffee table and then, move it right back. Like if I'm about to have somebody over, maybe I'm looking for something, it's like, oops, that's going to mess up the room if I move this coffee table 2 inches. So that's the kind of stuff you want to prevent that situation by moving your furniture on a regular basis. If your furniture that you're able to move, I mean, sliding a coffee table a few inches and cleaning the area underneath it, most people can safely do that, or your end tables. Let's talk about, and obviously you're not going to do everything that I'm talking about while I'm talking. Please don't feel rushed. Somebody in Great Britain broke her second iWatch by listening to my show. I apologize for that, but nobody's telling you to try to work as quickly as I talk, and it's up to you to decide what to focus on. I've talked about this before, but I have 2 decorative baskets. They're kind of like these wire boxes with like cloth liners, and then one side is wood. They're cute, and one of them's for toys for the grandkids, and the other one is for excess gaming gear, cords, controllers, things like that. And we went through those, and this is kind of a tradition that I do. Part of it is because Jessica mentioned it in one of our previous episodes about how you have to go through the toy box because kids might be putting random items in their random debris that's not their toys. That kind of got me thinking about it. But at the same time, whenever I have grandkids coming over, if I think of it, I will sort through the toy box to make sure there aren't any choking hazards or anything like that, anything that they shouldn't play with, something that's a little too sharp or that they might, choke on or whatever. Obviously, her kids are a little older, but the 1-year-old, I'm checking for choking hazards. And so maybe you have a toy box that you need to sort through. Definitely, if your kids or grandkids have a toy box in the living room and you haven't really looked at it in a while other than just tossing things into it, you're going to find some trash and debris and things that shouldn't be there. So that was kind of a project that we did in preparation for the visit and the party. And we definitely I did this with my 11-year-old son because some of the stuff was his Legos and stuff. And it was like, here, put these Legos in your room. The baby can't have these, that type of thing. We found some Legos in the toy box, but we also had a trash bag, and I needed him right there with me, not just as what I call a runner. A runner is like you're sitting on your butt organizing and you have a kid like putting things away for you. Sometimes I'll be like, I need a runner. I know I can be a little lazy, but it wasn't just because I needed a runner. The real reason I got him involved is because I needed him to make decisions, because obviously I could make a pile of Legos and then take those to his room, but I needed him to make decisions about some other toys, remote controls for remote control cars and just certain things I wasn't sure, like, do we still have the thing that goes with this? Or, something's broken. Is this trash? He needed to make some decisions about items. So sometimes when you're going through items that belong to, every time you're going through items that don't belong to you, unless it's a toddler or, somebody that doesn't care, you need to bring that person in so that they can tell you what's important to you. Something might be sentimental to that person. Something might be a part that goes to something else. Hey, I've been looking for that. So anyway, he had to sit with me and, make decisions about some of his toys and some things he wanted to keep, but they just weren't appropriate for the living room toy box. So we had him put those away. And I did not, now again, this is about balance. Just because I say I've got to do some work in this living room doesn't mean that I necessarily need to go through those drawers. My party guests are not going to be opening the drawers under my TV stand or on my end table. They're just not. That was not a priority. But what I did picture is maybe my 1-year-old grandson and his older cousins who are 3 and 5 might dump out the toy box. Not only could they find some things that the baby shouldn't have, but it might be embarrassing if they're dumping out random trash and debris that ended up in the toy box. You see what I'm saying? That was more of a priority. So a big part of deep cleaning is not making so big of a mess that you're overwhelmed and you can't really recover from it, or you hyper focus on something, but it's picking like, what do I really need to accomplish in here? What's the biggest problem in this living room? The unknown contents of this toy box. That's important. Wiping down the windowsills. That's important because we're going to raise the blinds so that the baby can't, reach them from the playpen. Also known as a pack and play. I always forget what it's called. Pack and play. This is so funny. Like, people my age are calling it a playpen, and then like my mom's calling it a porta crib. Work on whatever deep cleaning project needs to be done. And notice I didn't mention vacuuming or sweeping. You want to do that after you've done the decluttering project or the deep dusting project, because when I did start to go through the toy box and that other box of other stuff that also had some debris in it, I will admit the carpet had just been vacuumed and then it didn't look so good. after we had dumped everything out. So vacuuming or sweeping, you're going to want to do at the end. And again, let's not be such perfectionists that we feel like we have to make a decision about every single item. I mean, there were a couple of maybe items that I just stuck back in the toy box when it was just time to move on. The important thing was we got all the trash out of it. We got all the hazards out of it. Just anything that really shouldn't have been there. But this thing that might still work or whatever, toy, yeah, that can stay in there. So sometimes at the end, I call it recovery time, but sometimes at the end of a cleaning session, you want to take a few minutes to clean up the mess you made. Unless you were just totally cleaning as you go, you might need a few minutes recovery time. Like, the guests are going to be getting here and my hair is a mess. At some point you've got to wrap up the project, and that's what I call recovery time. Now, ideally, if you are having company soon, you will start working on these projects ahead of time, because of course there's always that last minute straighten. But things that I try to do ahead of time is have somebody deep clean the guest bathroom. Okay, that's already been done. It was done by a kid, so don't judge me. It's not perfect. But, you want to clean the bathroom. You want to deal with these project type things like sorting through a toy box or whatever. But let's face it, sometimes you are doing something like that at the last minute instead of a couple days in advance. Because I'm envisioning, like, before the party, we're going to run the vacuum, we're going to put out the decorations, we're going to wash whatever dishes have accumulated that day, stuff like that, okay? But sometimes you are in a situation where you're like, some people are coming over with a toddler and we need to sort through this toy box. Okay, I've talked enough about sorting through a toy box. Might not be relatable. I haven't always had a toy box in my living room. When my kids were growing up, definitely the toy box was in their room. So, because that's how it was when I was a kid. But yeah, when you're a grandparent, it's like you need some toys in the living room. But the toy box is just representing a project that you need to do that might create a mess. It could be that you're emptying out a drawer or just sorting through some kind of clutter that you have in a corner of one of your living areas. You're dealing with some stuff, but at some point you have to clean up the mess you've made. And it's okay if there are a few items that you didn't make a decision about. You didn't decide to throw it away, put it in your donation station, which is ideally, a box or a bag in the back of a closet where you're kind of gathering things to donate. You just weren't sure, or maybe you just didn't get to it. Maybe if you're like me, you have 3 drawers in your living room and you only organize 2 of them. Or if you're like me, 0. Okay. The drawers don't tend to accumulate as much debris, I don't think, but I didn't even look at it. I didn't even look in them because, the baby's not going to be getting into those. So disclaimer, I have a house full of people and I'm going to be working the day of the party. And so, I'm not saying, I am the ultimate housekeeper. In fact, if I was the ultimate housekeeper, I wouldn't have been looking for a show like this and then created it for people in my situation who needed kind of a, guided cleaning session to stay on track. So I know the struggle, okay? But hopefully you got some progress. Hopefully you made some progress in a living area, and hopefully I helped change your mindset if you were struggling with either perfectionism or procrastination or a combination of both, because those two things go hand in hand. Sometimes you need to just jump in, do a project for the amount of time you have, and then when you're starting to run out of time, put things back together. Okay, at some point, you're going to put those remaining items in the toy box and vacuum up the little mess you made. Okay? And again, you may not have been sorting through a toy box, but I don't know the specific task that you were working on in your living room. If you were just doing some deep dusting and, dusting knickknacks or something, you probably didn't make a huge mess, and that's nice for you. I'm being silly. Anyway, don't forget to visit cleanwithmepodcast.com. There's been another hiccup with the Apple subscription thing. Obviously, we put out 2 episodes for free every week on Monday and Wednesday. If you notice, we've been more consistent with that. But we also do a bonus episode every week for even more cleaning motivation. And the way you can get access to a bonus episode is to either support one of us on Patreon or at some point subscribe on Apple, which is different than just clicking follow. I hope everybody clicks follow on whichever podcast app you use. But on Apple, they have a paid subscription thing, and I had it set up, but long story, I had a duplicate account. I'm not a technology whiz or anything. I somehow ended up with a duplicate account. They told me I needed to delete one and that I could just pick one to delete. And one of them had the subscription feature. The other one didn't. I don't want to belabor you or bore you with this, but I basically had to start over with setting up the subscription thing. So it may or may not be available by the time you hear this episode, but you can always support us on Patreon. And if you want a different way to get that same weekly bonus episode, at some point you're going to be able to click try for free on the podcast app, which if you're using an iPhone or other Apple device, that little purple icon, that's your podcast app. That's Apple Podcasts. And if you know, if you're listening to the show on Apple, at some point you'll be able to subscribe, but we had that little hiccup, so it's not set up yet. But to keep up with what's going on, just visit cleanwithmepodcast.com. Or for more up-to-the-minute updates, you could follow Clean With Me Podcast on Facebook. Special thanks to my financial supporters. We appreciate you. And I'm sorry if you missed Jessica, but she is shopping for the cake ingredients as we speak. And I'm super excited to see what she creates for her sister's birthday party. Again, thanks for listening, and as always, happy cleaning. I'll talk to you in the next episode.